Hi everyone, Helen Blunden here at Activate Learn on Twitter. It is time for another book review. It is a Sunday morning, it's pretty quiet. The husband is out doing the supermarket shopping, and I thought it would be a great time to review a couple of the books that I have been reading this week. Now, first cab off the rank is The Pillars by Peter Paulides, and it is a book that I wanted to read simply because there was a lot of different write-ups in Australian media about this book, so I thought, why not? I'll have a go at reading it. Who knows, I might like it. As you can see, it is a library book, and if you're probably wondering, why do you always buy library books? Well, I don't buy them, I borrow them. It's the fact that I love to read, and I read a lot, and I use the library as a potential place of selecting books that I love, and if I love them so much that they make so much of an impact on me, I'll then buy them for my own personal collections. So Peter Paulides, this is his second book, and it is about, let me just read you the back, because I must admit, when I picked up this book at the library, I picked it up because I recognised the cover, and with the write-ups that I had been reading about, I recognised the cover and I thought, I'll just get it without really reading what it's about. And usually I do that. I like to just go into the book cold. You never know, you might like it, you might not, you might be pleasantly surprised. But I know I probably would not have picked this book if I had read what the blurb was about. But let me tell you why. Okay, so working as a writer hasn't granted Pano the financial success he once imagined, but lobbying against a mosque being built across the road from his home and the occasional meth-fueled orgy helps to pass the time. He's also found himself a gig ghostwriting for a wealthy property developer. In a world full of flashy consumerism and aspiration, can Pano really escape his lot in life, and does he really want to? So look, the theme doesn't really say much. Although when I did read about the mosque being built, I thought, oh, hang on, this might be really interesting. And I was really looking forward to this story of what they were going to do with regards to the mosque being built. Because in Australia, there's always a lot of tension with regards to if a mosque is being built in the community and the tension that it creates. And I thought that this novel would basically all just be around that one theme, but it wasn't. There were a few other different stories happening at the same time. And so what we see is, here's Pano, who has got a Greek background, and he is desperately trying to make it as a writer. He writes poems, so therefore you could see that poetry is he'll be struggling. And he's living with Kane, who is a corporate professional and who is trying to get the community up against having this mosque built, for the reason that the mosque will reduce the house prices in their area. Although, as you tend to read why they think this is the case, you really start to realize that that's not really the case. It is an excuse, but there's an underlying racial element to the reason why they don't want this mosque built. And so Kane tries to get Pano to pretend to be an Albanian Muslim who is against the mosque being built, just to put forward a case that, hey, even Muslims don't want this mosque being built. So we're having and reading about this situation. Now, Kane and Pano are gay. They're living together as well, and they have some kind of relationship of sorts. And I think somehow this relationship is based on one party trying to get something over the other party, if that makes sense. So it's not really a mutual love interest or anything like that. At the same time, we also have a couple of other storylines with the fact that Pano is ghostwriting for a high school friend of his called Basil, a really sleek, another Greek background guy who is into property development and who has kind of dubious interests, as well as how he acquires property is quite dubious. He's also bashing his girlfriend, so he's not a nice guy. And in amongst all that is another underlying story of the anxiety, I guess, of how he grew up with in a single household with his mother and his. I think for me, as I was reading this book, the main character I would connect to quite strongly was his mother. uh, his mother, we get this feeling that there was something that happened to her in her younger years against men. She's got something against men in general. She's losing the plot with regards to manic episodes, highly depressed character, and Pano has to deal with his mother aging and I guess the uncertainty of his mother's illness, which she does have, and all along also trying to get out of this rut that he's in Bankstown, which is, if you don't know Sydney, Bankstown is it's a community with a very high ethnic population, so there's a lot of tension. And Pano dreams of, I guess, a better life, and the fact that he's gay, he wants to kind of like walk down the street and hold the hand of someone he loves, without having, I guess, sly glances or without being bashed or hurt in the community. So this book is really about the inequalities between different suburbs in Australia and the inequalities between different ethnic groups as well. Part of me was I was slightly disappointed in this book. Look, I must admit, I liked the story with his mother. It kind of painted Pano in a really, I guess, his hands were tied. He was really desperately trying to help his mother, but at the same time, he was hanging out with this real dipsticks, and at times, yeah, I couldn't really connect with Pano, and I certainly could not connect with Kane, and by all means, I could not connect with Basil at all. And it was really interesting because it made me think of my own Greek background, and reading the stuff that was going on in here was something also that I could connect with, because it was very similar to how I grew up, or knowing characters who were in that same way. And sometimes I think, man, the ethnic groups, they really do it to themselves with regards to holding on to some very old-fashioned ideals that don't make anyone happy, that really push down on the individual choice and freedom to do whatever they want, and in which case perpetuate through the generations, which obviously annoys me. Now, it's nothing to do with the book. The book just made me think about these situations and how sometimes we, just through our own, I guess, growing up and the communities, the ethnic communities that we are part of, we want to still feel connected with them, and yet we are also disconnected because we're not allowed to express our true selves. And in so doing, we hang out in the same communities with the same kind of people, with the same kind of thinking, and yet there are individuals in those same communities who are trying to break apart, or to cover, or to hide, or to lie about themselves. So I guess I should get off my hobby horse for this one. So that was what I guess this made me feel. I couldn't connect with the characters, and certainly there were lots of points in this book where the author talked about more so, I guess, the gay relationship. There is a lot of sex in it, in this. There is a lot of drugs as well, which again I could not connect with. It's not a world I understand. But it was interesting just reading, I guess, the struggle of Pano trying to determine whether it is, like, what does he want to do? Does he want to stay in the world? Does he want to leave? And yet knowing that he is bound by constraint and chained up simply by, I guess, the thinking in his community. So this is The Pillars by Peter Paulides. Have you read this book? Let me know. I'd be interested to find out what your thoughts are about this. Now, just something else I have been noticing for my international readers, given that he's an Australian writer, I have noticed with Australian writers, there's a certain feeling Australiana sense that comes through in a lot of Australian writers, that Australians automatically pick up and get, whether it's the lingo, the idioms, whether it's kind of like the multicultural society, the angst between the different ethnic communities in Australia, whether it's the fact that, you know, a lot of Australian kids grow up in schools with lots of people from different backgrounds and with neighbours who are from all sorts of different countries, which is great. I love this. But you get this kind of gist, this feeling that I would be really interested to know if other international audience, based on their authors in their own country, really convey this same element in their writing. When I read Australian authors of a Greek background, another thing that really irks me sometimes is how people of Greek background come across as the slick, the sleazy, the ones who are trying to get have this upmanship over the rest of the world because they're trying to get ahead, they get far. And it really irks me when Australians of Greek background are, I guess, presented in this light, because we know that there are many people of all sorts of different backgrounds who have made great progress and are doing great things for Australia, and yet we get this personified, stereotypical type of character, which is really, I think, with time, generations would not identify with. And I would hope that the generations of children nowadays of people like myself who were born in Australia but of Greek background kind of don't perpetuate the same kind of thinking and growing up. I guess we can express our Greekness and our multiculturalism and our love for our own culture and tradition and history in different ways than, say, our grandparents did when they first came over to a new country. So look, I'm just going to stop it right there, because otherwise I'm going to get on my hobby horse, which I did a little bit. Anyway, that is it for me. Hope you are happy, healthy and well, and keep reading. Okay then, bye for now.